Are you prepped, ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready.
Welcome to Uplink.
You are the man, the myth, the legend, the explainer of Star Wars.
That's correct. I don't know if I would say myth or legend, but
But you get into those legends, right?
yeah, that's true.
The man, the myth, the legends, lore man. What is your experience? You get deep into the nitty gritty on Star Wars. You dive deep into all of the aspects, the schmodown mastermind. What are your thoughts on where Star Wars and video games take place with storytelling?
Right now, I wish that there were more of them.
Right?
Because, yeah, I mean, that's... I've been mostly pleased with the things that, have come out these past few years. Of course, my dog starts barking the second we start recording a podcast, but I adore Fallen Order. It's maybe my favorite thing that we've had in these past 6 years since the acquisition. Battlefront 2, Battlefront 1, I'm not a big shooter person. They were fine. They held me over. I loved Squadrons as well. So, the past two releases, I've felt very just fortunate that they've happened to be right up my alley. But, yeah, I'm very relieved that it's opening up more and more developers are going to be working in Star Wars, so hopefully we get a steadier stream, because I think that video gaming is such a cool way to tell a story, and Fallen Order was so engaging to me. So yeah, I would love to see more video game stories taking more prevalence in the canon.
Definitely. And I think It's been a weird transition recently with EA having the exclusivity license. Obviously, competition is better for us as consumers. And while the quality of the games were pretty good, controversies aside, were pretty good, I think the storylines, like Battlefront 2, first of the new EA games to actually have a story offering, I think it was fine. I really enjoyed the characters that they introduced there. I personally feel that the shift to the light side from the dark side was a little too soon, considering the marketing around it. But
definitely with you there.
Yeah. I mean, the book of Inferno Squadron did a really good job of fleshing out the characters, but if you're just sticking it to the campaign, I feel just a little bit too sudden. But
yeah. I get the sense, and this is just me talking, I have no idea if this is the case or not, but I get the sense that there was more to that story that was just then cut, unfortunately, because it was a shooter. It wasn't meant to be a story game. And so I think that if I had to guess, the original intent for that story was for it to be more gradual. But yeah, it's just kind of it's real fast, and then we skip 6 months ahead, and you're like, okay, now they're really in it.
It's like if you're gonna turn Avatar: The Last Airbender and just say, hey, you guys start writing now, we'll see how much time we can give you, and then they say you can only get one season. It's like, whoa, you can't do that in one season.
Yeah.
Characters were great, and then we got the epitome of the storyline and what Star Wars video games can do with the world building, taking all of these different aspects of video games together, and then just making a beautiful pie, which is Fallen Order.
God, yes.
So what is it about Fallen Order specifically that really hypes you up and makes you love it so much?
Well, all of my favorite games tend to be very story-driven, third-person action adventure. I love the Uncharted series, and the Last of Us series, the new Spider-Man. I just love that style of game. So there was already that element. It's a third-person action adventure, single-player story, and on top of that, I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. Makes sense because of Uncharted and stuff. And it has that temple raiding, puzzle-solving aspect to it that I feel I wish it could have been a little more of that in the game, but that's just me nitpicking at this point, because just so much about it resonated with me and just my interests, and it had all those other video game things that I love, and it's Star Wars, and it just really surprised me with its story and its mechanics and the way the Force works in it. Like, it just beat all of my expectations, where I was kind of expecting to have to like ignore the video gamification of the Force and be like, okay, that's not how the Force works, but that's fine. It's a video game. And the fact that they found a way within the game to make it work with the way I view the Force, and that it isn't about like leveling up and stuff. It's about like confronting your past and facing your fears and breaking through trauma. And I was like, how did they do this? It just, it blew me away.
I love when I first saw the trailer, and it has that moment where Cal Kestis is like falling out of the ship and he's like trying to decide if he should save the person with the Force or just not, and keep hidden like that. It's such a powerful moment that the game posits. Like, it's, will you continue your path of secrecy and hiding your true self, or are you going to make the journey to really discover that? Like, it's a powerful moment.
There's just so much about that game that is more powerful than I thought it would be. I was just expecting to go in and have fun doing a hack and slash with lightsabers, and I was like, that's all it has to be to me. But the story that they told was just so good.
Where do you see it placed in the wider world of Star Wars? Like, where does it for you in the broader? But at this point, it's like a multi-million piece puzzle.
Where do I rank it, or
where do you see it as like fitting in as a whole? Like, do you put it as on the levels of the movies, the TV shows? Is it like setting it up as something separate?
I think it's probably. I very often talk about like Star Wars and the content as kind of a funnel. So the films are obviously, that's what most people see, and then the live action TV series are beneath that. I think I'd place Fallen Order probably somewhere either just below the animated stuff or with it. I'm not really sure how that audience balances out, but it's like I see way more people talking about The Mandalorian than ever talked about Fallen Order.
Yeah.
But there's definitely conversation about Fallen Order. People seem to know what it is, even if they haven't played it. So I would place it above books and comics, right around like the animated stuff.
I would say that's around, at least from a consumer standpoint, the placement of video games in the Star Wars cog, or of the machine of that is Star Wars. But on like a support level, in terms of amount of books and the amount of comics, like, we're definitely getting a higher scale and a higher launch of books and comics than video games.
Oh, for sure. I think it's probably just because that's a smaller investment. And like, that's where you also see, I think they're, especially in the comics, they do just really weird stuff sometimes. And I think that's more of like a testing ground where it's like, yeah, it's a comic. We can try that here. There's not as much time that goes into writing a comic versus writing and developing a video game. So
definitely, you can pay one guy in Kentucky to write a Star Wars book versus like 300 people to make a Star Wars game.
Exactly. So that definitely has something to do with it. But it's like, when there are fewer video games, but when they come out, they always make a fairly big splash. Whereas even something like the High Republic, which I think has been fantastic so far, it just doesn't get the same attention that any video game does.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely a different audience. And while I would say when I first started hearing about the High Republic, I thought it was going to be a video game tie-in or somewhere. Like, they really hyped it up like it was a video game. Like, they had that level of marketing towards that. And it ended up being what we know as the High Republic now. Yeah,
I mean, this is the biggest publishing effort they have ever done. I don't think they've done anything on this level since probably Shadows of the Empire or maybe the New Jedi Order. But this is a lot more books, more comics, more types of media. I'm not expecting it to bleed into video games anytime soon. They've really been pushing that, like, this is books, comics, and published material. So I think they're going to tell the original story they had planned first, And then maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, yeah, we'll start to go into video games or TV series or something beyond that.
Mm-hmm. So we've had this discussion many times on the podcast, offline, online. The community as a whole has had this discussion. Where do you see the value of being super hyper canon with video games versus other media?
Well, so far, it's been pretty good. I mean, the Bad Batch recently went to Braca. And
I love it so much.
I know. I was really happy with that. It seems like they take the video games a little more seriously than the books or comics. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, this is why I bring up the funnel discussion so much, is because not that many people comparatively read the books and comics. That's like down at the bottom of the funnel. So when the Bad Batch brings Kanan into the first episode, and his story is in broad strokes the same as what we saw in the comics, but details are different, I think they feel more comfortable doing that and messing a little bit with a comic than they would a video game, because more people have played the video game. So I do think there probably are discussions behind the scenes where it's like, okay, we're going to do this thing that we feel is right for the story. We know that it's going to annoy people who read the comic. Is it worth it? Is that audience small enough that we're willing to put up with it? And I think that if they were to mess with anything on Braca or Fallen Order or whatever, I think they know that the blowback would be bigger. And the blowback wasn't small for the comic thing. Like, I saw a lot of that on Twitter.
Yeah, it's like, what is it, Poe Dameron's backstory got kind of readjusted for the Rise of Skywalker. Is that correct?
I would say so, yes. And again, they messed with a comic. And, you know, after the fact, they write a book that basically fixes that. And it's still, like, it's not that big of a deal. But I'm also thinking you could have very easily just delivered another line. It wouldn't have changed the meaning. It's just, I don't think that JJ was listening to the story group. Like, I think that the story group was like, hey, we kind of did this stuff in a comic, and I think that
somehow Palpatine returned, guys. Come on.
Sure. I mean, I think that's their job, to guide filmmakers, but they don't have control over them. It's up to JJ and whether or not he wants to listen to them. And so just Zori's line about how, like, oh, you abandoned us to go join the Resistance. I'm like, oh, no, he didn't. Like, he was in the New Republic for a long time before that. And so it's just, again, it's not like that big of a deal. And they've made it so that in broad strokes, it still works. And I'm like, okay, fine. But yeah, I think that the films are the things that will, like, probably never get contradicted. TV series, less likely to like have a movie mess with that. But, you know, they changed a little bit about Cobb Vanth's story. I didn't care because I was just thrilled to see him and that they acknowledged that at all.
Yeah.
Video games, I think, are probably pretty safe, but I put them, you know, like third in the ranking of canon.
Yeah. I love the metaphor of a funnel, and it's super, super true. And it's super, super indicative of everything. And I agree too of putting the live action stuff above the animated and like right underneath the movies, because I have a friend of mine, his uncle, he's 75. All of a sudden they started watching Mandalorian together, and he's like, he's got hearing problems. He has to sit closer to the TV, but he is like on the edge of his seat. He's like crying when like everyone else is crying. He's super, super emotionally attached to these characters that the movies didn't really capture him at first. It was the TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, there's the only thing that like bugs me about when they change things. And I have no real problem with this funnel idea, but it was more just that when they made the change from Legends, it was kind of suggested that it was because we're going to make it all work from now on, and that everything would count. And like, I'm pretty much over the fact that like, okay, well, that's not quite true. You're doing your best, but
Good job, buddy.
yeah, I just like I wish they hadn't made that kind of statement that like this is the goal, and I'm like, I don't know that it is. And I don't know that it should be, because that would it'd be too restricting for storytelling, but I'm still just like, but you said that one time.
But wait a second. Look at what you said. So what is your experience with Star Wars games? I've never heard the full explanation from Star Wars Explained about what is your journey through Star Wars in the video game sense.
I think my first Star Wars game was Dark Forces.
Yes.
That would have been when I was in second grade, somewhere around there. I didn't have it. I didn't like grow up with gaming systems. I grew up with a Game Boy, so actually maybe I need to adjust that, because I know I had all of the like Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi on the Game Boy.
Okay.
But Dark Forces is the first one I really remember making an impact on me, and going down to my friend's house to play it. And like my best friend growing up was also a big Star Wars nerd. We had like a book club on the bus basically, and so
awesome.
Dark Forces, we were like, yeah, we're gonna meet up after school. We're gonna play this game. We're gonna experience this story together. So Dark Forces was my first, and then I remember being obsessed with Dark Forces 2 when that came out, because now you had a lightsaber. I played probably about half of the X-Wing games growing up. I remember X-Wing Alliances was the one that I really loved, because I wanted to go into the second Death Star. Let's see, got into KOTOR on the Xbox, and then I think that was about the time that I was like going into college, and I just didn't have time to play video games as much anymore. So I completely missed like SWOTOR, and I know that there's still time. It's online. I should get into it, but it's like so daunting that I haven't just made that leap. I'm looking now at my Steam list. I totally skipped over like Shadows of the Empire was obviously huge for me.
Yeah.
I think that's what got me into books, because I wanted like the full story. So I read the book and the comic and played the game. Rogue Squadron was of course massive.
Oh yeah, same here.
Episode 1 Racer. And also I played that like really bad PC game that was like taking you through the movie of Episode 1. I loved it at the time, but it does not hold up.
Yep.
I'm just like looking through my list and being like, yep, loved that.
Mm-hmm. It's super daunting too. Like I picked up, when they had the Star Wars sale for May the 4th, I picked up the ones that I didn't have in my library, and I'm like, okay, I need to make like a schedule or something so I can actually get through these.
Ooh, Rebel Assault. Rebel Assault 2 specifically, I remember learning that was a thing, and like saving up my money so that I could buy and have that, because we finally got a computer that could like game, and that's barely a game, but I was obsessed with it when I first got it. Also doesn't really hold up, but
no, it does not. So yeah, dabbling through the Star Wars back catalog. What, obviously, with Jedi Fallen Order, is that your favorite out of all of them? Or is there one of the past games that really speaks to you more than Jedi Fallen Order?
I do think Fallen Order is my favorite. I mean, like a lot of them mean a lot to me, like Shadows of the Empire and Rogue Squadron and Racer. Just like I have really fond memories of them, but I do think that having kind of a better appreciation of Star Wars storytelling, I think Fallen Order is like maybe the best marriage of gameplay and story and character. It balances, cinematic storytelling and cameos without like taking over everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that Fallen Order is probably my favorite. I know like everyone loves KOTOR. I really like the story of KOTOR, but that style of game is just not quite mine. I'm not a big turn-based person.
Dude, I'm with you 100%. That was like when I'd played KOTOR growing up, but I never really I never really attached it to Star Wars. I just thought it was like some random game that I was playing. And then I went back because I've heard how like incredibly influential it was. And the story's fantastic. I'm not going to say anything against the story. I really like what it does with Star Wars. But that gameplay, it was a slog. It was.
Yeah, it's more like I like the controls of Fallen Order where, I mean, you're doing the same things. You're attacking people with a lightsaber, but like, no, I'm controlling the lightsaber instead of just like clicking on someone and saying, hit him with a lightsaber. Like, and then your character goes and does it. Yeah, that type of gameplay is just not really my style. Like I'm playing back through Mass Effect right now, which, you know, is obviously very similar to KOTOR, but I'm like, at least I have a gun that I get to point and shoot.
Yeah.
And I kind of ignore all of the other like squad aspects of that game. I just can't be bothered to learn it.
I agree. Just imagine though, like Fallen Order graphics with and gameplay style with KOTOR story.
Oh yeah.
Brought up to today's canon standards. That's what I want to see. Well, they've got the rumored KOTOR remake, and they've got like all of these rumblings, but we're at the weird awkward stage right now where they've said that they're going to be opening up the license. They've said all of these things. We've got leaks, we've got rumors, we've all of these things, but we don't have anything concrete. Like Fallen Order 2 still isn't like officially announced to be happening.
Yeah.
But we all know it's going to.
I mean, it's gotta come. It's been one of like the most successful single player games in a long time. So come on, like just do it. Just announce it. I'm like, please EA Play, just say that you're doing it.
Yeah.
Like
I don't need to see gameplay. You don't even have to show me the logo. Just say Jedi Fallen Order 2 will be a thing at some point in the future.
Exactly. That's all. Just like an official confirmation would let me sleep at night.
What would you like to see out of a Jedi Fallen Order 2? Like gameplay-wise, story-wise, any direction that you want to take it, what would you really like to see?
Man, it's really interesting because I don't think that they can do what they did in the first game.
No.
Like you want to see an expansion of new force powers. So, you know, there's a way they could do that with Cal. But it's... I wonder if they're going to do the same kind of Metroidvania thing that they do where at the start of a new Metroid game, like Samus has all of her upgrades and then she gets hit by lightning and loses them all and you have to recollect them.
I hope
it's
not.
like you can't do that with the Force. So
boop, you forgot again.
So it's like you can't do that. If they were to do a completely new character, it's like, well, you don't want to do that same thing again. I'm really interested to see how they treat the Force in the sequel. It's not going to bug me, like whatever they do, I don't think. But yeah, I honestly don't know. I'd be okay if they swapped to a new set of characters just because I thought Cal's story was so well done. But I'm also like, I'll do anything to see more Cal and Aaron and Grease, and
they
like,
set it up
Sierra.
like a perfect, like they have all of the characters for a really fun story in Star Wars. And what I've heard through rumors, like obviously it's still in pretty early production, their story in terms of video games doesn't really get finalized until much later on in the game development process. But what I've heard is that they're going to be focusing on Cal Kestis as the main character again, which I'm really hopeful for to see that. And I agree on the whole Metroidvania style. There are ways that they could do it in terms of like equipment versus force powers.
That's true.
I don't want them to say, hey, oh my gosh, somehow Cal Kestis booped his head and he lost all of his memories and he has to regain them again.
I think you make a great point about, man, you just, my mind went to something else to bring up in a second, but you bring up a great point about, yeah, we can use equipment. You can get like Cad Bane's rocket boots and now you can fly. And, yeah, you can do stuff like that. But then when I thought of that, I was like, God, Star Wars 1313 would have been so fun,
dude,
as
yes.
a Metroidvania. Because then it's like, yeah, you are upgrading your equipment. It basically is Metroid. Where now I've got my rocket pack and I can go reach that thing I couldn't get to before. Like,
it hurts,
why?
man.
I know.
It hurts deep.
I mean, that was to talk again about like just third person action, like when they showed those early looks at it, I was like, yes, this is Uncharted in space, gimme.
Or the canceled Visceral project, Project Ragtag, I believe. It had Amy Hennig, the lead producer director for the Uncharted games, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get Star Wars Indiana Jones. It's happening.
Yeah. That hurts too.
Yep. So that's ultimately what I'm super hopeful for with the opening of the license is less of that. Less of one producer, like one production company or one publisher saying, yeah, no, you're not going to hit the deadlines. Because I was talking to someone in the industry that had ties to EA, and they told me that the way that EA produces games, they do it on a release schedule versus when the game's ready. So if they have a game in the pipeline, they want to get something out, like Squadrons was this. They wanted to get it out in 2020, and they went through their games and said, hey, this is a game that we could release in 2020. You guys are good. Let's just release it. Charge $40. It's going to be good. 2020 game. Check mark.
Yeah, that's frustrating to me. Because it reminds me of like the way that the movies have been handled thus far, is that I'm mostly cool with the sequel trilogy. Like, I'm certainly not angry about it, but there were also some decisions where I was just like, wish you hadn't done that. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that they were like, okay, we just paid $4 billion for Star Wars or Lucasfilm. What do we do to make that money back? Easy. Episodes 7, 8, and 9. And we set release dates for it, and here we go. And it bugs me that they were like, okay, we're going to tell these stories because of a business decision and not because we have stories to tell.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just not the way to go about it. Like, I'm fine. You know, it's annoying to see a game delayed and delayed and delayed. But I would rather get the game than never get it, just
right?
because it's not going to hit the date.
Exactly. I would have waited 5 years to see Visceral's game come out with that power team that they had with what is the guy that does all of the storyboards and stuff with the prequel trilogy? What was his name?
Doug Chang?
Yeah. He was involved with it. He was in the planning process. Like, they had like the dream Star Wars project, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, sorry, we're going to cancel your game, and then we're going to remove you as a studio, period. Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
Moving on to something positive, though, with the wider reach, you said your love of Indiana Jones. We have Bethesda jumping into the fray, doing something really cool. They're making an Indiana Jones game. What are your hopes for that?
I don't know. Those games have always been very hit or miss. I really loved Fate of Atlantis growing up. I love me a good point-and-click adventure. I remember playing Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, and I liked it, but that was probably because I was 12.
Yeah.
I don't think I've really played any other Indiana Jones games, and the ones that I've seen played like online, I'm just like, it doesn't look great. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I hope it's a point and click, because that's the only game I can think of where I'm like, that's a great Indiana Jones game. But I don't know. I'm just hopeful that it's fun. I guess I hope that it's. I don't even know if I want it to be like Uncharted. I don't want to crawl all over everything like Nathan Drake.
And it doesn't make sense for Indiana Jones.
Right. I don't know what my hopes are other than just I hope it's good.
Do you think that they're going to focus on Indiana Jones's character or just explore his world?
I would guess it's going to be Indy, because like the fedora and the whip were in that promotional photo. I think it'll just be set somewhere, completely random in his life. It won't be tied. I'm going to guess it won't be tied to Indy 5 or anything like that.
Yeah, I hope not. I don't want to play old Indiana Jones. I want to play young Indiana Jones.
Right.
Sorry, Harrison Ford.
It's all right. I hope he's in recovery and doing well. Got injured again.
Again. Man, that movie seems like is it ever going to come out?
I'm just thrilled that like we have seen pictures, proof that they're working on it.
Yeah, this is true. Previously, we just knew it was maybe a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do agree. Now that you said that with the whip and the hat and all of that stuff, it would make more sense to be Indiana Jones at any period in his life. I would love to see I loved in the third Indiana Jones movie where they had young Indy. Like I love to see some of that. So maybe like teenage, late like early 20s maybe. I think that'd be pretty cool to see, or even just like pure Steven Spielberg and George Lucas style, jump right in the middle of the story. Don't explain anything. You'll learn it by context clues.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I hope that it starts, yeah, exactly like that, where we're just wrapping up some other adventure and that's it. No extra context. We just do some cool little treasure hunt. Probably don't get the treasure and then move on to the next thing.
Exactly. I love those types of stories with Indiana Jones. I think it's going to be very fascinating to see what that game ends up looking like, what type of style game it's going to be. Is it going to be linear? Is it going to be semi-open world? I don't think they could do full open world. Really feel like Indiana Jones, you need those like guardrails in that storyline. But maybe like Lego.
Yeah,
Indiana Jones
I don't
style.
even. Yeah, I think in that sense it probably makes sense to do more Uncharted instead of Fallen Order, where Fallen Order has open world aspects. I mean, you can just pop back and forth between planets. You can choose where you want to go and when. I think Uncharted makes more sense to just be like, no, this is linear, and you've finished chapter 1, and we're on to chapter 2, and this is the story you're getting.
Though now that you said that, I just got really excited about like that style of Indiana Jones game because they have the map. Could you imagine instead of the ship, you're just saying, "I'm gonna go here," and then you do the animation and dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, that would be fun.
Like I saw it immediately as you said that. So there are options. I didn't even consider that before.
That's a really good idea. I like that.
Yeah. And then a final thing I want to talk about with you is the Ubisoft Star Wars game. We have, they already showed footage of it in the engine with the Avatar Blue People game that they've got coming out. So we know kind of what the engine will be able to do visually. But what are you expecting to see on a gameplay and specifically on like a storyline for that?
I have no idea. Like
it's exciting, right?
yeah. That's kind of like what I want. I'm expecting that it's going to be original trilogy era.
It seems like their love child right now with video games.
Yeah. And I think that although like the prequel trilogy kids are now like adults who game, so I think that's probably a market that they should be addressing more. But yeah, I just feel like maybe hitting original trilogy casts the widest net in like everyone who games.
Yeah. There isn't like a sect of prequel trilogy fans that are like super anti the original prequel trilogy fans that are super anti the original trilogy. It just works in the reverse, so it's like a safe bet if you want the, like you said, the cast the widest net possible. But it's like you saw how much of a popular aspect of Battlefront 2 was the prequel content. Like it just turned into the prequel game.
Yeah, that's like I would be totally down to do something that's not original trilogy, because it does feel like, not just even outside the video games, the comics and the books feel like they've been pretty focused in original trilogy. So I'm like, let's do something else. But yeah, I'm honestly a little worried just for myself for the open world game, only because kind of like KOTOR, it's just not my preferred style of game. Like every time I try to play Fallout or Skyrim or any of those, I just can't get into them. There's so much to do that I'm like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
But I do think if anything is going to pull me in, it'll be Star Wars. I never really got to try Galaxies when it was out. So
oh yeah, I forgot that it was even a thing.
Yeah, like I think it'll pull me in. I think I'll have a lot of fun with it. But there is part of me that's like, ooh, I hope I enjoy this more than other Fallen or open world games that I've tried.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also like, you know what? If it doesn't land for me, like I got Fallen Order, I got
Exactly.
Squadrons. Fallen Order 2 is coming, and that's why the whole like let's open it up to other developers is so nice, because yeah, the more games there are, it's like
Yeah.
it's the stakes aren't so high for every single one
Mm-hmm.
that it's like we have to please everyone with this one game.
Exactly. Like in the height of Star Wars video games before the acquisition, we had tons of different types of games. Like there was a point and click adventure game, there was open world game, they had shooters, they had all these things, and like we wouldn't get hung up like we have been recently. Like if you weren't into the first person shooter or third person shooter, like you'd have another option. But with this recent round, it's like, well, I may not like this. I guess I'm either going to have to suck it up or I'm just not going to play Star Wars games.
Exactly. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what it was called, but there was like a Star Wars racing game that it was like a goofy version of Pod Racer or something. And I'm like, I can't imagine anyone releasing that now.
Yeah. Which is a shame.
The stakes would be too high. Yeah. I mean, like, it's not something that I'm interested in. I didn't play it in the first time, but like, I just cannot imagine anyone being like, "Oh yeah, let's throw that out there in the climate of Star Wars gaming right now."
Yeah, everything's taken so seriously with Star Wars. And it's like, come on, I'd love to see like, personally, I would love to see Heroes versus Villains, the game, but like just as insane as possible. Don't take canon into account. Just say, hey, this game's not canon. We're just gonna do whatever the heck we want to. Have fun.
We want Masters of Terras Kasi again.
Yes. Yeah, like games like that never would have been made, but there's like, it's become more of a cult classic. The longer we get away from that game, the more of a cult classic that game ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about like George Lucas's style of him saying, you know what, I don't really touch the video games, I don't really touch the books, but I'm letting people play in my sandbox. Like, you guys go nuts. And it was never considered canon to him, and it didn't have to be. But yeah, it gave us some like just weird and goofy things that, yeah, we look back on and we're like, oh, Terras Kasi, you were so silly.
Yes.
But like, I have fond memories of playing it.
Oh, definitely. Same here. Yeah. I do hope we end up getting some of those fun things, and it isn't necessarily only tied to mobile, because I feel like they have a lot more of a blank check when it comes to mobile games. Like Galaxy of Heroes literally prints them money, which is why they can literally do whatever the heck they want to, and both Disney and EA are like, sure, throw that character in there, we don't care. Well, you still making
It's
money?
funny. Like I know almost nothing about Galaxy of Heroes. I just don't get into mobile gaming at all. So I hear about Galaxy of Heroes sometimes, or like Cubs fan Han obviously is a big player in that community, and I talked to him about it, and I'm just I don't know what it's about, and I think I'm too old to get into it.
Yeah. I'm interested about Star Wars Hunters because it has the Switch tie-in. Like, I think that's
Right.
a lot more people are going to get into it that wouldn't normally play mobile games. But I'm still hesitant on the whole, like, mobile video games are just, like, it's very toxic in the way they bring money in.
Yeah, I think I'll give Hunters a try, but I don't see myself... I keep forgetting that it's even a thing
Right.
coming out this year.
I think
I'm sure
EA
I'll stream it
Star
once
Wars
and-
has as well. Yeah.
That'll be their big Star Wars thing at EA Play. Or wait, that's Zynga, right?
It is
Never
Zynga,
mind.
but yeah, we don't get anything. And it's like with when Battlefront 2 got canceled, and then like the same day they're like, oh, hey guys, Galaxy of Heroes is getting another update.
Yeah.
Really, Galaxy of Heroes, it's not the time. We're mourning the death of a family member. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe Star Wars Explained will become a Star Wars Hunters channel overnight. Like, get taken over.
That is the thing that will just shock me.
Yeah. Exactly. But anyway, dude, this has been an absolute blast. We could continue talking. I would love to pick your brain on some more stuff into Star Wars, but we'll save it for another episode later down the line. This was fun.
Sure. Yeah, I'll come back anytime.
Heck yeah. Like I love, so I'm just gonna like shower you with compliments right now. I love the community that you've built around in Star Wars. Like it's like we have a lot of negativity in the Star Wars space. Online is filled with lots of negativity, but I love the community that you've brought around with Star Wars.
Thanks. We're very proud of it. Our comments section is like usually a pretty nice and fun place to read through.
Definitely. I love the Lego streams too. Like I will like just throw it in the background and do other stuff, and like it's so soothing and relaxing. Because I don't have the time for Legos, which is super sad. But I'm like, man, I do like this. I don't have the space for Legos, honestly. That's
Dude,
my problem.
Neither do we.
I
I don't know what we're gonna do with like the cantina when we build it.
This is my Lego Star Wars house. We built it in the back.
Yeah.
It's 2,000 square feet, full of Legos.
We're just gonna be covered with stuff, and I also have like a closet full of sets that are not Star Wars that I want to build, and just haven't had the time to do that. So I'm with you. Like that's what you got to do. You got to make it part of your content, and
Exactly.
then you can.
Then it's
have
a
your
business expense.
Yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. If you're listening to this right now and you don't know Star Wars Explained, first off, what's wrong with you? Second off, go follow him in the description of this episode. Thank you for listening to Uplink Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Uplink Podcast or on Instagram at Uplink Podcast. If you like the show, and we hope you do, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can leave a review. It helps us out a ton. It gets your feedback and it helps us attract new listeners. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so on our Patreon, patreon.com/uplinkpodcast. Be very appreciative of that. You can get exclusive content like Uplink Plus, our exclusive Patreon podcast, as well as some bonus insider deals on Uplink Podcast merchandise, as well as a mention in the outro, this right here. We'd like to thank Daniel, who supports us at the $10 a month level and helps bring the show to you lovely people. Thank you so much, Daniel. And if you'd like a shout out at the end of the episode, please consider supporting on Patreon. Helps us out a ton, helps us to expand the show and bring you weekly content. We also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Star Wars Battlefront Podcast. Yes, I know, we're Uplink Podcast now, but can't change the URL for YouTube. So please consider checking out the content that we're producing over there. We have weekly streams every Saturday at 12 p.m. MST, as well as bonus content and expansion of the show. You can find the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find this show. Links to all of the guests' information will be in the description of this episode, so definitely go check them out as well. As always, thanks for listening. Goodness gracious.